Apart from Dracula, no piece of Gothic literature has been adapted or reinterpreted for the big screen more than Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. Shelley's timeless tale of runaway science and ego, and the existential relationship between creator, createe, and nature was first published in 1818 and has since metamorphosed into a defining filmic impression of Gothic beauty, thanks to the work of James Whale and Boris Karloff in the seminal Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, which were released in 1931 and 1935 respectively, and which represent the pinnacle of Universal's initial wave of horror films from that decade. There were the Hammer horror films of the 1950s and 60s, riffs on the monster with The Munsters, Scooby-Doo, and dozens of other parodies, plus this guy with the lovely singing voice. But even with such a lofty legacy, no film has ever really captured the beauty or eloquence of Shelley's text. It never got its Bram Stoker's Dracula moment, despite an attempt from Kenneth Branagh in 1994, which, while brimming with affection for the material, was more a wet blanket than anything anywhere near as fiery as Francis Ford Coppola's take on Bram Stoker from 2 years before. This is the task that horror maestro Guillermo del Toro has set with his own adaptation of Frankenstein, made in collaboration with Netflix and venturing into cinemas for a brief theatrical run October 17th before being shunted into streaming for all eternity. Starring Oscar Isaac as the eponymous Doctor and Jacob Elordi as the Creature, with Christoph Waltz, Mia Goth, and Felix Camera rounding out the key supporting players, all the signs have pointed to this being a perfect match between director and material, with GDT having a penchant for finding beauty in the macabre and having spoken passionately of his own reverence for Shelley's writing and the works that it inspired, which are numerous and basically countless. Combine this thematic fit with the director's own love of practical effects and Gothic imagery, and this should, on paper, be a match made in heaven. In reality though, it's more of a mixed bag, with the 2025 version of Frankenstein suffering from a bloated opening act, a misfire of a performance from lead Oscar Isaac, while also boasting some gorgeous painterly imagery that marries the Gothic with the romantic, and a fantastic performance from Jacob Elordi as the Creature. The end result is an adaptation that unfortunately frustrates as much as it captivates, and whose strengths render its shortcomings in even more garish detail. Bram Stoker's Dracula, sadly, this ain't. Let's get into it. There will be some very mild spoilers here regarding the first act as we go into this review, just as it plays a pivotal part in what doesn't work about the film, but otherwise I'll be avoiding specific revelations and moments and anything at all major. Just a heads up in case you wanted to go in completely blind, in which case you should skedaddle now, like, do your best Frankenstein walk out the picture, because yeah. Anyway, let's get going. So, as with every adaptation of Frankenstein committed to screen, Del Toro makes some key changes from Shelley's novel in placing his own spin on the story. Victor's early childhood takes on a big focus this time around, especially his relationship with his mother and father, played by Mia Goth and Charles Dance respectively, as we see the roots of his obsession with death take shape, and the impact his cold, distant parent had on his personality. After a gripping opening sequence which, mirroring the novel, starts at the end of the story, with Victor and the Creature in the Arctic, the film languishes on these childhood memories for an exceedingly long period of time, with the thematic payoff amounting to little more than another tired statement on trauma begetting trauma, and the sins of the father, and blah blah blah. We've seen this so many times now. Apart from the glacial pace of these scenes upsetting the current of the film, thematically, there isn't really anything here that adds to Shelley's story. The timelessness of Frankenstein lies in its existential terror and the conflict between science and nature, among many, many other things. Tapping into Victor's origins in such detail, and also altering the nature of his relationship with Elizabeth, also played by Mia Goth, makes the film more of a tedious character drama and leeches time away from cultivating the relationship between the Creature and his creator, with Del Toro also returning to familiar Beauty and the Beast motifs that, while seductively well drawn in the moment, do feel somewhat out of place in an adaptation of Frankenstein. Exacerbating this greatly is Isaac's performance. He's appropriately driven when we get into the depths of the monster's creation and when Victor starts to, seek his revenge, but the accent work leaves a lot to be desired. Hoo boy, he spits dialogue like Homer when he's had the vocabulary enhancer, if you remember that episode of The Simpsons, and it doesn't help his case that his counterparts deliver more convincing turns, nor that only 10 months ago we got to feast on an acting masterclass from the cast of Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. In this case, I probably would have just preferred Isaac to keep his American twang and forego all the limey lingo, as it makes for a really jarring contrast that he never really manages to get over. But I did say that this was a mixed bag rather than a complete write-off, so obviously there are plenty of goodies to feast on too. For one, the set and costume design is tremendous, with Mia Goth's Elizabeth getting the best of the bunch. Costume designer Kate Hawley does exceptional work in the movie, not quite reaching the lofty heights of Iko Ishioka on Bram Stoker's Dracula, but again repeating her success from her previous collaboration with Del Toro on Crimson Peak. There are some supremely brilliant arrangements here, built to match the temperature of the picture, from scenes of brimming passion and excitement being paired with reds and greens, to death and desolation getting all kinds of blues, blacks, and greys, ensuring that Frankenstein is a visual delight from start to end. And once we do get to those moments of death and desolation, the film starts to sing. The construction of the creature, through to his animation, escape, survival, and then quest for vengeance, is compelling and appropriately sinewy and goopy. It's in these moments where Del Toro's interpretation really begins to shine, the scale and precipitous nature of the story largely overcoming those earlier frustrations. Largely. Elodie, too, is superb as the creature, replicating the lyrical consciousness he has in the novel and commanding the frame with a statuesque turn. There are going to be those who will argue that the monster is too pretty or sexy for the story, and that it makes the subtext of the novel way too explicit, but the design is impressive and ghoulish in the best of ways, with the creature's red eyes piercing through darkness, a perfect visual innovation on past designs. And yeah, it's maybe unsurprising to hear this, but those sequences where Del Toro's adaptation sticks most closely to the source is also where it shines brightest. Here, unmithered by those earlier divergences, the timeless qualities of Shelley's novel are able to pierce the veil. There is still the occasional bizarre flourish thrown in, with scenes of the creature battling sailors and wolves taking us into superhero-y territory, and the aforementioned changes to Victor and Elizabeth's characterizations still looming over too, particularly in its final scenes. But it's mostly able to draw things to a successful close, which is pretty impressive given everything that the movie stacks against its favor from the beginning. If nothing else, Del Toro shows us once again that he's right at home with the monsters. And it is just ultimately really cool to have a filmmaker who's such a champion for that genre getting to make a big budget adaptation that's highly likely to be a hit on streaming when it does eventually drop in November. Should be in cinemas for a longer theatrical run, but hey man, them's the breaks when you're working with Netflix, unfortunately. And yeah, those are really all my thoughts on this year's Frankenstein. As a big fan of the novel and of Gothic lit and horror in general, this was also my most anticipated movie of the year, especially since the last stab at making a truly faithful Frankenstein movie was in 1994, and it wasn't very good. A lot of expectations go in with that, particularly when you have a director who's made a career making a home with ghosts and goblins, which is probably good context to share for why I feel so disappointed despite liking the movie overall. It's good, not great, but because the highs are so damn high, it makes those less intriguing diversions from the source material all the more gutting. Like, yeah, you were so close! You were this close to perfection! We were this close from greatness! Insert Ben Mendelsohn from Rogue One image here or something. Again, it's very annoying to dwell on the bad with something that I mostly enjoyed. It's a typically beautiful Del Toro movie, and one that I'm personally very glad exists. it just also happens to overcomplicate one of our greatest Gothic stories. It's a love letter, yeah, but also one that doesn't know quite when to stop yapping, like me as well, so 3.5 stars. The body's reanimated, but the limbs, well, they're kind of falling off a bit. But I want to know what you'll think of this down in the comments below. Have you caught Frankenstein at any of the festivals this year? Are you going to catch it in cinemas later this week, or are you waiting for it to hit streaming? Give us your thoughts, drop the video a like if you enjoyed it, and also be sure to check out our recent review of Good Boy if you like good boys, and also horror movies. Horror movies with dogs. Yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye!